slaves and wandering in the desert. In Exodus 24, we read, "Then the Lord instructed Moses, 'Come up here, and bring along with you Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of Israel's elders. All of you must worship from a distance. Only Moses can come near the Lord, who is at the top of Mount Sinai.'" So these people have moved to pretty much the base of the hill or the mountain, away from the community. There was no tabernacle yet. They're all just living in tents out there. All just out there in a big group. And the others must not come near, and none of the others are allowed to climb up the mountain along with him. Then Moses went down to the people, and he repeated all the instructions. So Moses went up, went back down, came back, repeats all the instructions and the regulations that the Lord has given him. All the people answered with one voice. A lot of people here too. Wasn't a small group like we have here. A lot of people. And he said, "We will do everything the Lord has commanded." Then verse 4, Moses carefully wrote down all the Lord's instructions. Early the next morning, Moses got up, built an altar at the foot of the mountain, set up 12 pillars, one for each of the 12 tribes. A tribe is a family. There are 12 family groups of all the Hebrews. And then he set some of the young Israelite men to present burnt offerings and sacrifice bulls as peace offerings for the Lord. Moses drained half the blood from these animals into basins. The other half he splattered on the altar. Now, that's a discussion for another day. I know that sounds bizarre to some of you, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. For some of you, you do get it. It's a great discussion, a great understanding. That's sort of what we were doing, as I said, with the offering. Thankfully, we weren't splattering blood, right? We're all glad of that. You know? And if you're not, I'm not your pastor if you're looking to splatter blood. Sorry. Then he took the book of the covenant and he read it aloud to the people. And again, the covenant. The covenant is the contract, the promise that God made with the people. So he reads the book of the covenant to them, and again they said, "We will do everything the Lord has commanded. We will obey." See, the leaders of the Israelites promised to do things exactly as God said. They'd go to the mountain. They'd go up there. No one went to the top except Moses. No one dared do anything because they were scared. I mean, they didn't know what would happen if they actually saw God. But the biggie is when they went back to the people's answer was, "We will obey this covenant." And a covenant is this. It is a contract, a deal made by God with God's people. All right? God by nature, the definition of God, if we had to describe God and put him in definitions, put God in definition terms, is God is perfect, perfect in love, perfect in truth. So therefore, that's important in a covenant, it is impossible for God to break a covenant. See, I can't make a deal with you and break it if I'm perfect. See, if I break it, that makes me imperfect. That means I cheated. I lied. God can't do that. Now, we can't take the time to explain all that for today, but God can, so that's the nature of the covenant. The person, the side that gets broken, is our side. Not just the Israelites. That includes us. We tend to break covenants. We have trouble staying in covenant. God always, us sometimes. So the tabernacle is built specifically as it was in there. I mean, the very colors and the threads, everything there. Guess where all the materials came from? They were offerings. They came from the people in the community. They gave up their gold, they gave up their silver, they gave up their bronze. They gave up their purple and scarlet thread. Blue, purple, and scarlet. You go, okay, so they gave up some thread. My mom or my dad, whoever sews in the house, got a whole container full of threads he uses, and he goes to Walmart and buys new ones anytime. No. Threads were handmade, and if they were blue, and if they were purple, and they were scarlet, they cost a lot of money, took a lot of time to make, because those dyes were very hard to create. And they gave them up. Along with their fine linen, along with their goat's hair. You go, yeah, I'd give away a little goat, Yeah, you would until it got cold. And then you wished that you had it back. And they gave all of this as a commitment to God. In return, God says, you build this tabernacle, because he knew they needed something. He knew they needed something to know that God was with them. Now, we talk to the kids, we know God is everywhere now, but then they didn't understand what the word omnipresent meant. For us, that means God's everywhere. They didn't get that. They've been wandering for 400 years in the desert. Now, obviously not the same people. I mean, great-grandparents have now gone on and everybody's here. And sometimes they thought God wasn't with them. Really, what happened was the reason they spent all that time because they wouldn't stay in covenant with God. They started worshiping other gods, and so God said, okay, you're on your own. Wander in the desert a while. I'm still here. You ever want to come back? I'm still here. So now they're in the promised land, and God says, I'm going to give you something to prove to you I never left you, and I never will. And call it a tabernacle. So the Israelites had wandered, they'd been enslaved, and now they had this. This is how they saw the tabernacle. Understand? First, they saw the tabernacle as a tented palace for Israel's divine king. See, they were thinking that God was going to send them a king. One day, hadn't yet, but God was going to send them a king. Those of us who are Christians here now, we know who that king ultimately is. All right? So they're going to send him, and they believed that this tabernacle was his palace. Hey, folks, look around the great cathedrals of the world. We still sometimes build palaces for God. Come the end of July, the 1st of August, I will graduate in Washington, D.C. from Nashville United Methodist Church. You wouldn't recognize it as United Methodist Church if this is the kind of church that you grew up in. You'd have no idea. It is stone. It has Gothic spires on the outside. You walk down this huge aisle. I don't know how many feet it is tall inside. The altar's way up in the Holy of Holies. Very cathedral-like. Because we sometimes can't get past God with us, that we think God's in a palace, because he's a king. So they saw that as that, and the Ark of the Covenant set up there. The Ark of the Covenant literally had the 2 tablets with the 10 Commandments on it in the covenant. I mean, it was in the Ark, which was a box. Ark was another word for a box. All right? And it was in the box. And that's where they believed God was living. Now, the other symbolic emblem of that is they thought, skip to my next slide. It's a little better. And I've got a third one we'll go to in a minute, but let's stay here. That the dimensions of this were symbolic of the Garden of Eden. Now, what's important is the Garden of Eden, if you read in Genesis, eastward, God dwelt, he lived in the Garden of Eden. That's where God was. All right? It was east face. See, there were cherubim in the garden. There was gold in the garden. There was a tree of life. Let's go to the next go to the next slide. It's easier to see. There we go. The next one is in that there was a lampstand in here. See lampstand, the green box? Lampstand was a lampstand that was reminded of the tree of life. And the tree of knowledge was the law, the 10 Commandments. In the garden there was a tree of life. Remember, that's what Adam and Eve were eating from. Thus God's dwelling in the tabernacle was a step toward joining paradise again. It was just a month or so ago that we did a series and we talked about that Jesus, coming in relationship with Jesus, brings us back into that perfect paradise, the relationship. Now the tabernacle has even more symbolism of what we need to understand. And this is what gets completed in our Christianity. This is what we have to understand. God made no mistakes. This is important stuff as a plan, is that we see Jesus is the tabernacle. See, that's where God lived, was in that black rectangle with the red and the green and the blue and the orange. That's where supposedly God lived. All right, he was in the tabernacle there. Well, The New Testament said Jesus is the tabernacle. In fact, in John 1, in verse 14, it tells us, and you may need to put some of this down. There's a great blank space here at the bottom. If you know what tabernacle is, so write that stuff down so you can go home and do it. You can check it out. The Greek word used here is the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's who Jesus is. All right? That Greek word, dwelt among us, that phrase, the translation of that is identical to tent of the meeting or tabernacle. In other words, it was literally, the tabernacle was God dwelt among us, as in Eden God dwelt among us, and in Jesus now, in the new covenant, is God living among us. That's what it is. Jesus became the God-man and He tabernacled among us. But then Jesus also spoke about His body as being the temple in John 2. And Paul taught us that we're united to the risen Lord, that we are the temple of God. Whoa, it's just moved all the way to us. We now are the temple of God, in 2 Corinthians. And then if you remember going back to Easter, we talked about on Good Friday, there was an earthquake, and the ground shook, and the curtain was torn in two. That curtain of the Holy of Holies, to get to that red box where the Ark of the Covenant was, the only person that could go in, as I told the kids, was the priest. Average people were not allowed in there. But literally in Jerusalem, while He's crucified, the earthquake occurs, that curtain got ripped in two. Jesus' body is that curtain. Jesus is torn in two to not separate us from God. So therefore, our brothers and sisters, we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Christ, by the new and living way that He opened for us through the curtain and through His flesh. It's Hebrews 10. Jesus is the full and final sacrifice. Now there was only one entrance to the tabernacle. This end, the entrance here, you can see. One entrance. In one picture you see some cloth there and all, but this end was left open. The other three were always closed. Intentionally. If God lives in Holy of Holies, how many ways are there then to the Holy of Holies? One. One way. My Christians hearing anything yet? Should be. It indicates there's only one way to God. It was through Christ alone. No man may come to the Father but by Him. You go, well, there wasn't any Jesus yet. No. This is so when Jesus comes and Jesus claims He is the temple, when He claims His body, curtain torn in two, all the Jews are going, I get it. I get it. Now you can look back and say, wow, this was the perfect plan. Because it was. So in the outer court, the first thing in, you come in through the gate, you hit that big red spot. On the video, you would have seen horns that painted red on the end. It would have been blood. It's a big empty box. There was a shovel and a pitchfork. And that was to dig up the ashes and all from where you burned all the animals. All right? In order to get to God, there had to be a sacrifice. So, in Christianity, it's not an altar, it's a cross. It symbolizes the cross. Then the next thing in line was there's a big bowl there. And you can see it on the video, it's huge. And it's full of water, and it's for washing. Priests had to wash before they went in to symbolize that they were clean to go in the presence of God. What do we do once we accept the cross? Then we get baptized. There's the story of Christ in the old tabernacle. There it is. On the right was a table. I love this part here. It says showbread. The word used a lot of times you see is S-H-E-W, shewbread. It's showbread. And what it meant is that God built this temple for them to have something to tie into. And it was, some of them were pagan. Some of them were non-believers. Like some folks who come here, you guys are non-believers, you're not sure, you don't know about this stuff. That's fine. And he said, I'm going to take that. And in the pagan one, they put bread on the table because the gods, with a small g, had to have a place to go eat. Because gods would get hungry. Zeus would get hungry, or Hermes would get hungry, or whatever, and they'd have to go and have a place to eat. Yet in God's tabernacle, there were 12 loaves of bread, but they weren't for God. They were for the priests who were going to be there all day. It was a practical reason. But guess why? Because our God doesn't need any bread from anybody. There's huge symbolism here. There's huge message. Our God doesn't need to be fed by us. The 12 tribes needed to be fed by Him. That's what that message is. As Christians, though, we come to the table, and how many loaves are there? One. Why? Because through Christ, we are one. It isn't by accident, folks. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Not 12 of them, not it. I am. So as this journey through the tabernacle begins through an open door, the curtain was easily open. Anybody could walk in there. Because God invites everyone into His presence. And then He builds a tabernacle to teach us, as we know here at Dorsey, Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God with us. He wanted to show them that I'm in the middle of you. I'm with you always. I've never left you, but I get that you need something. And on top of it, all of this got taken apart and carried? I'm glad I wasn't there, because I got to believe that was heavy work. Because they would know, the symbolism of them was God would never leave them, no matter where they went. And in that, as they moved in, walked in a little more, and there was a pot of manna. Does anyone remember when in the wilderness they tried to gather extra manna after God said not to do it? Do you remember what happened to it? It rotted, smelled bad, it was nasty. But yet, there was a special manna that God let stay forever. And they had a pot of it there to remind them that with Aaron's rod that he used to say, this way, of God's divine power. God's divine power. Cross, baptism, power of the Holy Spirit. Now we're moving. The pot of incense promotes a practice of prayer. Incense was used for couples that Rebecca stopped me before I got here and had to tell me a practical part. But incense is coming up, and we see that in the Roman Catholic Church, a lot of us kind of, I hate the smell of incense. I think it's gross. But those are prayers ascending to heaven. See where the incense altar is? Right before you get to the red box, which is where God lives. Why is it there? There is only one way to be in relationship with God. Through prayer. Not through Bible study. That's important. But that won't get you there. Only through prayer will this church, our parish, individuals, will we ever grow in Christ. Rebecca was sharing with me too, though, that the incense was used because all those burnt offerings smelled really bad. And when people came to the tabernacle, they've been living in the desert, they didn't have a good smell. The incense was waved around to cover a lot of that up. You know that's why they wore powdered wigs in colonial days? Because their hair was gross and had lots of bugs in it. Sorry, I just had to do something to Then finally there's the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant. Oh, I love this one so much. Because the Ark of the Covenant on top was what was called a mercy seat. For those of you who love Revelation, you know that one day there will be a mercy seat, the Bema seat. There will be a place where God sits. And they believe that that's where God sat. Okay? And what was below the mercy seat was the box that had the Ten Commandments. And now this is a word that we think is normal, covering. We have covers on our bed. We put a covering over something anywhere, whatever we do. No. Covering is a symbolic Hebrew word. There is intent in this word. When the Ark of the Covenant is built, God tells them to create a covering. That's the word He uses. To separate from the law to God. You can't get them together. See, sin's in the way. Guess where they took that extra blood and sprinkled it? On top of that covering. So that blood was on the covering between the Ten Commandments and the seat of God to tell us there had been a sacrifice made to bring them together as Christians. What is that blood? That's the blood of Jesus Christ. Amen. That's That's what that is. And one day, we'll see it. One day that mercy seat will be real beyond the Ark of the Covenant. You know, and I promised you, we got this far, and I'll be wrapping it up, but I promised you a third point. I promised you 2019. We've had a little bit, but I promised you that. So what's our covenant? What's the promise that God's made us? For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him, whoever, anybody, all y'all, shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send the Son into the world to judge, but that the world might be saved through him. See, Moses and the team responded as the Lord commanded. They did everything he said, made it right to the point. And when he brought up the people, Moses and the leaders and the people said, I will obey. Maybe that's why our covenant seems empty at times. I don't mean to be mean. I don't mean to be harsh, but we've got to be real. Only one half of the covenant is able to be broken. Remember, God can't. Maybe your covenant is empty because I will obey doesn't exist very often in your prayers.
Amen.
I'll share that from my point. I will go do it. I will try to fix it. I'll go build your church. And God says, go knock yourself out. Because until you obey it, it's going to happen. Maybe that's why our covenant seems empty. You know, I've been taught so much by the folks in our church who struggle with addiction. And one of the things that they remind me over and over and over again, Pastor, until they hit bottom, get out of their way, you can't help them. Maybe until we hit rock bottom in our covenant, until we're so far separated from God, because we want to be so much in charge, that we're never going to realize there's blood on that covering, and that covering is open. Finally, the good Father placed a symbol of his love in the midst of his people. Showed them, this is where I am. They needed to see it. All of them were living there. Okay, this is God. You know, we know God is everywhere, but sometimes I think we think God disappears too. But in that, these people, he made himself portable to travel. He's I'm not leaving you. I guarantee it. Well, fathers, men, adult women, maybe even our young folk. Where are you in relation to your community? The community you call family. The community you call Elkridge, Columbia, Severn, Baltimore. Where are you? Can people see that you are in the middle and that you're never leaving? Can people see that you're willing to pack up and travel and go with them in their heart, in their mind, wherever it is, off to college, off to a job in Texas, off to wherever it is? Are you in covenant with them? Does your family know how to get to the entrance to the tabernacle? Because if they don't, nothing else, it matters. I know society says it's about our health and family, and it's not. Sorry. It's about one way to the Father through the Son and the Holy Spirit. And if they don't know where that entrance to the tabernacle is, then maybe Moses and Aaron's of this church, you need to step up and teach. Maybe you need to show. Because you need to put the family of God in the presence of God. As fathers and adults, the challenge for us is, can we and will we tabernacle amongst our families and communities so they may better know God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
As you're able, let's stand and sing our fathers.